Welcome back, everybody. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. We're here for episode 2 of our What's in the Stack. And this week, the format that we're going to use, we're going to have one topic we kind of tackle from the beginning, spend some time just debating it, going through what we think, and then we'll go through what is in our respective stacks for this week. What are we reading? What are we looking at for this week? But the topic we wanted to tackle today, we're going to talk about one of the biggest brands at Marvel, a brand that has had a good year, I think, in a lot of terms, but then in some ways it's not, and that is the X-Men. So we'll kind of set the landscape of what me and Mike are going to talk about here with the X-Men. Mainly, we're going to talk about, are the X-Men going to be able to recover what's happened to them in the last couple of years? And I think we can tackle this on two fronts. Obviously, for us, we'll start on the comic book front first, and then go to kind of the multimedia entertainment piece after that. If we look at the comics, Mike, I think the hard thing for the X-Men they're going to have to deal with. The Ultimate Line X-Men book is not an X-Men book. It is a completely set universe, different thing. So as far as a fresh, new jumping on point for readers, not going to happen there. In the Ultimate Universe, unfortunately for them, because Spider-Man and Black Panther did that, they didn't there. You look at the main continuity. You have an incredibly divisive era with the Krakoan era, where the
Yep.
mutants acted very out of character. A lot of them became killers. They became friends with like Apocalypse and Mr. Sinister and Magneto, just hanging
Magneto.
out. Yep, hanging out with the team. You had people getting killed and then reborn and cloned and all of this stuff happening, just absolutely throwing all these wrinkles into it. You look at the fact they've done this relaunch, but they can't quite let go of Krakoa and they're trying to do something new. And I picked up a handful of books. I think a couple are working okay, but didn't really seem to take off. I think even in the editorial page, they said, like, we're just throwing as many solo series out as we can to see if one of these will stick, which does not sound like a great plan for running a comic book line. You throw in the fact that even before Krakoa, we had time traveling mutants, alternate timeline mutants from different universes and different futures, like Rachel Summers, who I believe is like from the Age of Apocalypse world, who still exists in the main continuity. All of this stuff just makes it so difficult for X-Men to get new fans to come in. So, Mike, I'll go to you because I know you are an X-Men fan, but you have not picked up a book. I think I convinced you to pick up X-Men 1 like 4 or 5 months ago. That's the
Yeah.
last one you picked up. For you, as a lapsed X-Men fan, do you think it's possible for them to ever fully recover as a comic book brand from all of that's happened in the last couple, I guess, decades ish to X-Men?
I would go back decades. And yeah, I think, you know, X-Men is one of those broad brush titles that when it was hitting on all cylinders in the 80s and through the 90s, they were just like, oh, we'll have a X-Force, we'll go to Canada, we'll have
X Factor, yeah, all that.
uh, X-Men Antarctica version, X-Men Alaska. It was X-Men Siberia.
X-Men
But
Gold, X-Men Blue. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
right,
so many different
the
titles.
but the market was there for all that, and fans loved it, and it was great. But it's not that era anymore.
Yeah,
And we just saw them launch like 13 books, was it?
13. I think they've actually launched a couple in addition
And
to that. So I think they may be up to
and
16
then
or
there was
17 books.
Ultimate. You know what? It would really have been cool if they just, for me, and I've said this a million times, I just want the original X-Men team together. And the crazy thing about it was, we had that great X-Men 97 TV show with all our favorite characters on it. And, although the plot was a little strange, there was a little Krakoa in there.
Yeah, a
Um,
little bit, kind of what they did with
yeah,
Genosha and all
yeah.
that. Yeah.
There was a little bit of a Krakoa spill over there, but it was so cool to see all the characters again. And then I want to go to the store and I want to see Storm and Cyclops and
And you want to be able to get them in one book, not have to buy 12
Wolverine.
books to see
Yeah,
them all.
this is the new era that we're in, guys. And maybe like twice a year you can have a spin-off and we can revisit the X-Force, or we can but make that but put the main characters back in one book, and let's get on with a new revamping of the X-Men and just get one strong book going. And then you can have these little side books with whatever else you want to do. Kitty
Yeah.
Pryde has her own little micro X-Men team with 2 or 3 characters and goes out on a 6-issue miniseries adventure. That's great. That's cool. But yeah, just have that main title, get it going good and strong again. And forgive me, you guys, you can see in the back here, I'm I'm selling comics
You are
this
bringing
weekend.
the stacks of comics to
Yeah,
live up to the
there are
title.
many stacks back there, and yeah, I'm selling comics this weekend, and tomorrow morning I'm going to replenish my stock down there and sell some more comics, and I'll have my comic room back in order next week.
Yeah, I think hopefully they'll get us to a point where some point those stacks of comics will feature X-Men again. But I think the thing is, I agree with you in terms of I think it's Pat Riley, the coach in the NBA, said there's the disease of more. When a team wins a championship, it's hard to win in a repeat because everybody wants more the next year. No one's happy with what was before. And I think that summarizes X-Men completely. X-Men is always a thing where they just can't focus on one thing. They're always like, but what if we could get 10 books going? What if we could get everyone a solo book? And it's like, you guys have 30 years of history to kind of prove. You can have an X-Men book, maybe 2 X-Men titles, an X-Force title, and Wolverine can have his own book. Outside of that, Cable has had a long-running comic, Deadpool has had a long-running comic, but those were kind of designed almost as solo characters. I mean, I know they started out in like New Mutants and stuff like that, but eventually they kind of went to their own book, and that's been how they've been. Storm and Jean Grey and Psylocke and Cyclops and all these great characters. They're fantastic characters. They don't pull a solo book. They were never designed that way. And I think that the huge thing is you can look back at the inception of it. Stan and Jack and the people responsible for designing the X-Men made it a team book. They did that for a reason. It wasn't like they were struggling to sell solo books of characters. They designed these guys to be team members, to work together. And I think that's the thing is you talked about X-Men 97. Why we liked X-Men 97 so much as a show, or most folks did it, it's the dynamics in the team. It's the Rogue and Gambit relationship. It's Magneto coming in to mess things up. It's Logan and Jean and Scott and the love triangle and all that. It's the classic elements. That's what we want out of this stuff. And the thing is, you look at it now, I mean, and I'm always going to try to get into X-Men, but I tried on some of these books, and I think I still am picking up 2 or 3. I think X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, and Wolverine. But the main thing that stinks with those books is they're even still bringing in newer mutant characters. And it's like, guys, you have like 80 mutants already. You do not need more. And I think that's the biggest problem is they just always seem so dang greedy in what they're trying to do because it's like, well, we don't want to do just one good book. And what's funny is you go back and what they've worked on, the classic X-Men runs, right? Go back, like you mentioned, 90s era where it really blew up. Why did that book do so well? Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, right? That's why that book did so well. It's yes, the characters are great, but you had Jim Lee and you had Chris Claremont. You go back to why Wolverine took off. You had Chris Claremont with Frank Miller working on Wolverine's solo series that kind of got him going that 4-parter. There's so much about X-Men that is about the creatives that you get to. And what's funny is they seem least concerned with the creatives who work on the X-Men books. I think they completely just look at it and go, it's an X-Men book. People are going to buy it. So just who can write a comic book and who can draw, we'll put them on the book. And it'll work because it's the X-Men. And it doesn't anymore. And I think that's the thing is they've got to sync. Uncanny X-Men is one of those books like Amazing Spider-Man or Batman that it's not just about that one book. The entire line is on that book. And to be honest, it's one of those appointment books where I think when you have Amazing Spider-Man not doing well, or Batman or Uncanny X-Men, there's a ton of people, that's the book that brings them to the shop. And if they drop that book, it's going to kill the sales on Captain America and Thor and all these other books that they buy because they went to the shop for that book. And so I think they've just got to get back to minimize the line down. But I think the bigger thing than minimize the line down, I don't care if you have 8 books, but you better have 8 stellar creative teams. You better have artists that are appointment artists that move the needle on that book. And it's one of those things that's like, look, I don't really care to hear about budget or anything. Cancel the other 12 books and take that budget and put it into Uncanny X-Men to where you have that top-notch writer and talent on there, and it will move. I think the other thing, like you said, you got to give us the lineup that we want. You can't, again, it's one of these things, it's proven. You're trying to reinvent the wheel. If you put Wolverine, Storm, Jean, Cyclops, Beast,
Yes,
Nightcrawler,
yes,
Gambit,
yes,
Rogue in a
yes,
book, it's going to sell.
Yes,
You know,
that is
and,
gonna
and that's the
sell.
thing is if you can get all those guys going, there are secondary characters, ones that I love a lot, like Colossus and Kitty Pryde and stuff like that. Maybe you can have them cameo a bit in the book and then they can launch their own title. But they're so concerned with like Quentin Quire and all these other characters. It's like these guys, we've seen this for years. It doesn't work. People aren't buying the books for these characters. Just give us it's again, it's we've used these analogies all the time. It is like a hamburger joint that's like, no, we do not put the hamburger on a bun. We won't do that. It's like, please, why won't you do that? We're not going to do it. We just don't do it. And that is the weirdest thing with X-Men is they are literally sitting on the team, on the lineup that we all want. It is proven. And because of greed,
Oh,
stupidity, whatever, they will not give it to us.
I'll do you one better. You go to the restaurant. We have your Wolverine hamburger buns over here. We have your Storm patty over there. We have we have
Cyclops, yeah,
Cyclops.
they
We
will
have
not put it.
Cyclops cheese, but
They
we
will
don't
not
put
put
them
it together.
together. No, we don't put them together.
No,
You
and
gotta buy,
it's yeah, you got it would be yeah, it would be. You
yeah,
go to the burger joint, buns cost this, lettuce cost this, cheese
yeah.
cost this. Can't get it all together. You got to buy them
No,
all
no, no.
separately, and it's just
You got the Colossus
and they all cost the
pickles.
same price too. That's the other part. Is like it's
Yeah.
not like one's more expensive than the other, and I
Yeah.
think that's the thing that they got to
And
fix.
he's
I think
like,
the
I
other
want
part,
the whole hamburger. Please,
what
sir. I want the
even
whole
if you wanted to
hamburger.
break it into two books, because you said, hey, 10, 12 characters, that's too much. Okay, give us six in one, six in the other, and go with it. They won't do that. And I think it's just such a mistake. I think the other part we can look at is narratively. The damage that's been done to the X-Men, I think, outside of overcomplicating with too many books. Krakoa era, the X-Men acted more like villains than heroes for a lot of fans. I know there's some fans of the Krakoa era. If you are a fan of the Krakoa era, good for you, I guess. That's great. Not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't enjoy.
But
But for a lot of folks, when you got Nightcrawler dropping people into the vacuum of space and not thinking twice about it, when he's a priest who does not kill,
yeah,
like when you got the team teaming up with Apocalypse, I don't ever want to hear the X-Men giving Wolverine junk because his berserker rage got the best of
right,
him and he
right,
killed a couple people.
right.
And I think that's the thing they destroyed is once you let Nightcrawler and Colossus and Beast and all those guys become killers, people like Wolverine, Deadpool, Cable, the ones who do fit in that X-Force model, kind of go away because they're on the X-Force team because they're willing to kill. Right, that's what separates the Dominoes and the Cables and all those characters. Is hey, these are the X-Men who are willing to kill to get the job done. Once you got Cyclops blasting people and killing them, and Nightcrawler's dropping people into space, it's hard. And I think for a lot of people, it made it where the X-Men weren't heroes for them anymore and damaged them. To be honest, this is where I would just use the Charles Xavier MacGuffin and he just
Yeah,
resets everything. I
yeah.
think with the X-Men, you almost have to burn it all down and kind of take the characters back
And
to formula almost.
here's the beautiful part about it is if you push the reset button and gave us back the original team in one killer book, everybody would
Mhm.
forget everything and they would just be on board again.
Well, I think that's the thing is, look, I know there's people who are going to be obsessed with the canon and the continuity. And look, I am never a fan of when they just toss canon out the window. X-Men,
But
they've tossed canon out the window themselves 10 or 12 times.
so many times.
When you look at what happened with Onslaught and then Age of Apocalypse, and then they had was it Age of X-Man or something like that a couple years ago, and then they had
Age
the
of X-Men.
Inhumans come in and Cyclops died, and then you had there's just so they had all new X-Men where Brent Bendis brought back the '60s version of the X-Men, and they were interacting with the mod. They've screwed up so many things. To me, I would just use Xavier, Onslaught, whatever MacGuffin that you want. Or I think you know what, Cable has. I've always loved the character of Cable
Oh
because I
yeah,
think he's
yeah.
kind of like
Cable, he
the
could do it.
mutant John Connor is kind of how I've
Right.
only sort of seen him.
Yeah.
Um, I would just have some sort of time traveling thing where Cable stops something and it resets the thing, and we're back to almost like the '90s continuity of these characters. And that they did this with Beast recently in the comics, where Beast got crazy and they had where Beast left a clone of himself with his personality from the '80s. And it is, I think you almost have to do something like that because what you did with Krakoa is when you got Nightcrawler killing people, when you got Rogue killing people, it ruins the dynamics of those characters so much. And when they're just hanging out and friends with Magneto, this is a global terrorist who's killed thousands of people,
Yeah.
and using the whole well, he's
It,
a mutant,
it,
so we look the other way.
it was
That's
very
psychotic.
strange.
I think they do have to use Cable, use all these time traveling mutants for a good thing for once. Reset the continuity of the X-Men. You don't have to touch the rest of Marvel, although I think you could do that too. But I think you could reset almost like a Flashpoint kind of thing that DC did with the New 52, and reset the continuity because I think they got to get something back to erase a lot of the actions these characters stupidly took. Um,
Yeah.
Last part, we'll talk about this on the X-Men movies, TV. Here's the interesting piece because we talked about the brand overall.
Oh yeah, the movies are coming
The
up.
Fox movies, in my opinion, the Fox movies have been overly maligned. I think
Yeah,
X Men 1, X Men 2, I'll even say X Men 3, I don't think is the train wreck everyone makes it to be.
I
I think
know.
all three of Wolverine's solo movies are actually pretty good. I
Yes,
did
I
like
agree.
Wolverine and Deadpool for some pieces of it, although it was kind of cameos and things of the movie.
It
But
was all right. It
the
was a
the end
fun movie.
movies like was X-Men Apocalypse movie was terrible. Dark Phoenix was terrible. What's interesting is they've used a lot of the material already. And instead of making a clean break from Fox, they dragged Jackman back in and made him Wolverine again.
They keep
So,
dragging me back.
and again, I'm never going to complain about seeing Jackman because I do
I
think,
know.
even though
It-
he's not comic accurate, he's way too tall. He is fantastic at capturing the character. But for you, Mike, with where they're at with the cinematic universe, if you got charged with how do you reset the X-Men into the universe because of all that's come before, what would if they just said, "Hey, what's your elevator pitch on how to launch the X-Men as a series again?" What would you do?
the first I would not do I would I would hire Chris Claremont to write the script.
Okay,
That's what I
so
would
just
do.
go straight comics
Yes.
if
Whatever
you're willing.
money,
Yeah,
whatever money he wants, I would hire Chris Claremont to write the script, and and I would just take all my cues from Mr. Claremont because I would know it would be in good hands in his hands.
yeah. I mean, I think going to a creator like him would be certainly an amazing idea. I think if you did ask, what would you do? I think one thing I would do is keep the lineup small early on. I'd probably go 5 or 6 characters and I would separate Wolverine initially. I would have 2 series of films for X-Men. One would be the X-Men
Sure.
films, and one would be Wolverine.
I would
Wolverine
vote
could carry a
that.
solo movie. Just have Wolverine in the Canadian wilderness by himself, and then maybe in the second or third X-Men movie they find Wolverine. I think you do have to start from scratch. I think you have to act like those Fox stories as much as I think there are people who like them, myself included. I think Deadpool and Wolverine did a good job in the end credits of being like a swan song for those. I'd kind of let it
Yeah.
go. If Jackman is willing to keep playing Wolverine, I mean, he's in a costume. The guy's in incredible shape. Wolverine could get older. I think you could drag another 3 movie. I mean, I guess the movie they joke they'll make him do it till he's 90. If
Yeah.
he was willing to keep doing it, I'd launch a Wolverine solo series again with him, just a little more comic based as opposed to what they did the first time.
Yeah.
But I would relaunch the X-Men in full. I'd probably go what Storm, Cyclops, Jean, maybe Gambit and Rogue, and have
Yeah.
that be the team. And I would
Yeah.
just kind of start from there and build slowly. I
Wait,
think you
no
got to
Beast?
start from scratch.
No Beast?
You could go Beast. I like Beast. Beast might be hard to bring CGI wise, but they've done that before. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'd recast everybody outside of Jackman because Jackman, if he wants to keep playing, I think should play it as long as he wants. They already established he's an alternate universe one. But I don't think you can bring him into the Marvel universe as it is right now, the MCU. I'm thinking after the Doctor Doom thing, you reset it and then you just go from there. It's just interesting because they just seem to create the same problems for themselves. But we'll see. I think the X-Men, it's so weird because in some ways they've had a great year with Deadpool and Wolverine making so much money and X-Men 97. It just seems like, man, they can never control themselves enough to
Yeah.
go, let's just get a couple solid things
Yeah.
and then kind of go from there.
The genius move, man. Pony up for Mr. Claremont. Have him write a screenplay.
Especially if he's still willing to write as he appears to be. I mean, he writes books. I will never understand why he's not just the main writer on the
If
X-Men title.
anyone could save him, it would be
Yeah.
Chris.
Well, no, and the big thing is, even if it didn't work, is anybody really going to blame anyone? They're going, well, we tried to get Chris Claremont. Like, even if the movie or the books didn't end up being good, if you put Chris Claremont and it doesn't work, I'm just going to go, you know what? It wasn't going to work with anybody. Because that
Right.
guy, again, you
Right.
literally have the genius who helped revitalize this stuff. He's still around.
Yes.
No, I mean he's the reason Wolverine's as popular as he is with that incredible kind of noir series they did with him with the failed samurai approach and all that. I just think they got to try to get him back. But let us know what you guys think. What would you do? Is there any way the X-Men could be redeemed from the Krakoan era for fans who are crazy about that? For fans who are reading the books now, are you enjoying it? Are you seeing something that's there? What would you do to kind of get the X-Men back on track? Let us know what you think below. Before we close out episode 2, we're going to go through our what's in the stack for us this week. Mike, I will kick it to you, sir. What is in your stack? What are you reading currently, sir?
I am a week behind, and guess what? I'm not going to even get my comics tomorrow because I'm selling comics, but I am reading Cruel
Your EC
Universe.
Comics reboot. Okay.
Yes, I'm reading Conan. I am reading. Oh, this one is really cool. Hard Case Comics. The Girl Who Called Cthulhu, Minky Woodcock. It's a great, fun, fictional read with a historical twist.
Okay.
I picked this baby up. I don't know if any of you picked it up, but it's the Deadpool with the 3D glasses. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to read that. Um,
It's cool to see that Deadpool get released, but man, what if they had just timed that at the movies or had that available at the
can
movie
you
theaters?
imagine if this was at the checkout with your popcorn? A million copies.
Man, Marvel
Just
always, just always good ideas, poor execution every time.
Just saying, they would have sold a million of those if they were available with the what was the popcorn bucket? It had the
Oh, the Deadpool Wolverine pop. Yeah, that
yeah.
everybody's going crazy over. All right, so you're
And
working
for an extra $5, you can get the comic and
something like that.
and I'm also reading 10 Cent Plague, great history on the 1950s in comics. And I picked this up a month ago. I haven't cracked into it yet, but it should be a good read. History of British comics.
Nice. So you're going to I have been in the middle of moving, which is why you kind of see the digital background for me here. I should have my full kind of comic thing going forward for next week. But while on the road, getting ready for move, I was able to pull out one of my favorites that I own, Rocketeer. You can
Oh,
see here, Dave Stevens, one of my favorites. I have probably read this 10, 12 times. Incredible art. Rocketeer, one of the most underrated characters. We got to talk about the Rocketeer movie at some point on here. I know both you and I are huge fans of that
I
one.
love that
Working
movie.
my way through that. So many cool Dave Stevens illustrations and art and all. It's one of the best. If anyone hasn't read it or you've just seen the movie, would absolutely recommend it. It's such a cool kind of World War II sort of story. Really love everything about that. That's been a classic for me to reread. So always cool when I can see something like that and revisit it. But let us know for you guys, what's in your stack for this week? What are you reading? What are you working your way through? New comics, old comics, whatever it is. Got recommendations. We always like seeing it as well. It's something that's good. We'll kind of cover it here on the channel. We've seen some great recommendations from folks before that both Mike and I have enjoyed. As always, folks, let us know what you guys think below. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.